What is going on, folks? It is Dr. Remy LeBeau, and I'm coming at you once again from the X-Layer to provide you my very deep and insightful reaction to Wakanda Forever! I just saw Wakanda Forever. I'm not going to spoil it just yet. I'm going to give, the folks a moment to realize that it is what it is to them before, I go talking about all the specifics of the film. But nonetheless, I will get into spoilers soon, and I will warn you about when that happens. So don't worry about it. If you haven't seen the movie and you just want to get my initial reaction, here's my initial reaction. I cried a lot. There was a lot of crying going on. I was like oddly emotional very much of the film. Like a lot of the viewing experience, I was on the verge of crying or actually having tears in my eyes. A lot of it is not tear-inducing, but like, I don't know, maybe it's just the absence of Chadwick and just kind of understanding that this film is a result of Chadwick not being there to a great extent. Even though there are clearly elements that would have played out the way they did, but we all know what happened. We all know that months before the production, Chadwick Boseman passed away, and it was unexpected. And although he was probably honest with the studios themselves, like he wasn't telling everybody his personal business, so I'm sure it hit everybody quite hard. And then the production was delayed, and they finally got to it. Anyway, I really enjoyed this movie. It's a Ryan Coogler film, Ryan Coogler is a master of the art. The guy knows what he's doing. Yeah, he went to USC Film. I went to USC Film. I know what they teach you there. I know that he is sort of the dream of what we all had going there, of what we could become. And he actually became it. I'm extremely proud of the guy for having done so. And you can see in the film, in the execution, even going back to Fruitvale Station, Creed, Black Panther 1, like the dude has it together. He's got a vision. He's got sort of a deft hand in executing everything that vision is encompassed by. And it ultimately winds up landing as a very satisfying filmic experience. And that's what this was. Now, of course, the film itself has to do certain things, and that's just the name of the game when you're dealing with the Marvel Universe. Now, people often criticize that the Marvel Universe is A, B, C, D, or E. And the very fact is that the Marvel Universe is just the Marvel Universe, because nobody's ever done anything like the Marvel Universe before. Sure, we've had television shows, and there have been serialized films, but to create this vast, just huge, expansive universe of characters, of stories, all interconnected, at a level that's this successful, never been done, okay? There's no template for it. Like Kevin Feige and the rest of the team, they're inventing this as they go along, and they've clearly done a good job so far. They have challenges that they have to meet along the way, and they meet them because they're fucking amazing. That's why they pulled this off to begin with. That's why we got the 20-film Infinity Saga, and now another saga being planned and executed as a result of the success of that. These people know what they're doing. They are the trailblazers. They are the ones that are going to continue redefining what cinema could do in this area, in this arena of sort of telling these larger-than-life stories in this very interconnected world. And that's something that nobody else has been able to do. We've seen so many companies be like, okay, we're going to do this. We're finally going to do what Marvel's doing. And then they fucking fall flat on their fucking face because they don't have it together. Marvel has all the pieces in place. They executed something brilliantly, and now they're building it again, and they're taking chances. They're taking big swings, and this film is another big swing. All right, so anyway, let me just finish up my initial thoughts before I get into the spoilers and say I loved it. I love the film. I don't know how it's going to land with the majority of people. As a Marvel fan, as a film fan, as a fan of Ryan Coogler, as a fan of all these performers, as a fan of the costume designer, the production design, the music, the composer, Ludwig von Amazing, I forget his last name. I really fucking enjoyed this film, and I think I'm going to enjoy it quite a bit throughout my life, because it's just one of those special kind of experiences where it's just like, wow, for me, mission accomplished. the general public, I don't know how the general public reacts. Like, there's all these like tendencies for people to just turn against things simply because like everybody is enjoying. Like, if there's a large portion of the population enjoying something, then everybody else needs to turn on it. Like, that's just like the rule or something. I don't know. It's like humans got together and we're like, we have to do this. Like, we have to make this rule and we have to execute it because that's what we got to do. Anyway, so I had to unbutton my shirt because it's getting a little hot in here. But whatever, people are gonna shit on things. I don't know why, but I'm just gonna continue enjoying things. A lot of things in this phase have been, hit and miss with the general audience. For me, like, I see it for what it is. It's like building blocks, So it's like I'm letting the building blocks build. Like I've said in a previous video, when Captain America came out, the first Avenger, it wasn't really a huge hit, and people weren't like all up in it, like, ooh. It was Avengers that turned the tide. It was when all the building blocks came together and there was this grand vision of what it could all become. That is when it all just kind of exploded. And then you had Winter Soldier, which kind of elevated Captain America. And then you had, further films that elevated the rest of the characters. And then it all kind of kept growing. And then they were able to introduce new characters, etc., etc. Like, that's what's going on here. I see it. They're doing it on a grander scale because they can, because they earn the right to. But people just need a reason to shit on things, That's just the nature of the human being. C'est la vie. Anyway, all that aside, Wakanda Forever, fantastic. Really enjoyed it. For me, not like one of the top Marvel films, but as far as like quality and storytelling and filmmaking, like pretty freaking amazing. And again, very emotional. Anyway, so that is sort of my initial thoughts, non-spoilery. And now I will get into spoilers because there's a lot to spoil here. There's a lot going on in this movie. A lot. A hell of a lot. A hell of a lot. My goodness. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, spoilers begin. Okay, Killmonger. Killmonger makes an appearance. Fascinating. Actually, I really like that moment. But starting at the beginning, we had the funeral scene. And we had the initial scene of Shuri trying to reconstruct the heart-shaped herb in order to save T'Challa. We don't see T'Challa dying, but T'Challa is dying and then he dies. And it's a very somber moment. And then we go right into that funeral scene, that beautiful funeral scene where everybody's happy because it appears that in Wakandan culture, like, you celebrate a person's life rather than completely mourn them when it happens. And that's just sort of what I got from it. I wore all white because, like, there was this thing going around where people were going to wear white to kind of commemorate and honor Chadwick's passing. And I felt I did my part, and I'm sure many other people have and will continue to throughout this week and maybe throughout the coming weeks. Because, the movie needed to kind of take a moment to acknowledge what has happened, and it did. And it felt, I'm going to be honest, it felt a little bit shoehorned in, but, like, rightfully so. It had to be shoehorned in. They had a script already. Like, Ryan Coogler had been working on a script, and he had to rewrite the script, minus T'Challa. That means he had to make Shuri the main character. That means something that was being planned in the future, which I'm sure it was, to ultimately at some point get to the point where Shuri would become Black Panther, because it's happened in the fucking comics. So if it happened in the comics, it's going to happen in the films. And so it seems as though, like, they just had to, advance the schedule, and Ryan Coogler kind of did what he needed to shape this story into one about Shuri. Now, I've heard things said in the media by some critics saying, like, there's some star power missing, and I didn't feel that. Because you got Lupita Nyong'o, you got Angela Bassett, you got Shuri, you got M'Baku, you got all these powerhouses. You got Bilbo Baggins, you got Tenoch Huerta, who is the guy that played Namor. Fucking powerhouse, that guy. He did a great job. I was really happy with the depiction of Namor. I'll talk about all of that in a bit. But, like, there's so much. Like, if I came into this movie not knowing that Chadwick Boseman had died, and then seeing the death at the beginning, and then just kind of seeing the movie play out, I would not have missed And I would not have felt like there was something missing. I would not have felt that whatsoever. I think the only reason why people would say that, and maybe will say that, is because it's like we're just hyper aware of the reality of the situation beyond the screen. This is one of those situations that are extremely difficult for the filmmakers because, you know, it's like, what can you do? Like, it's a no-win situation. Like, Chadwick died. There's been this whole, like, recast T'Challa thing. It's like, I get it. You want T'Challa recast. So do I. So does anyone. Like, we want T'Challa in these movies, but the dude died months before production was going to start. Like, the crew is a family, and they had to mourn him. Chadwick Boseman's old family probably had to mourn him. Like, you know, Kevin Feige, everybody involved had to mourn him. Like, everybody involved had to take a moment to mourn him. I mean, Ryan Coogler, like, I saw him at the premiere, and like, he was wearing this beautiful gold necklace with like kind of that had like an embossed like Chadwick in it, and it's just so beautiful. Like, you could tell like how much it touched him, you know, to be able to honor Chadwick in this way with this movie, you know, like, that's such a special thing. And like, that moment needed to happen, people. It needed to happen. Everybody needed a moment to just kind of be like, okay, like, this happened, and we need to acknowledge it, and we need to process it, and we need to just kind of let it play out, because that's what humans do. You know, and it's like this whole thing of like, because you know they've recast General Thunderbolt because what's his name died, the dude that played him, William Hurt, and they're like, oh well, they can recast him, but they can't recast the child. It's like, hold on a minute. First of all, not a main character. Second of all, Thunderbolt's not going to be a movie for a while. He didn't die a few months before production, for God's sake. You know what I'm saying? And he's not the main character. T'Challa's the main character. Like, it's a very complicated situation. I 100% have respect for Marvel, everybody involved, Ryan Coogler, for what they did, the decision, the very difficult decision they had to make to put aside this sort of need to move forward with the script they had and let the mourning process take place both in front and behind the camera. I respect that wholeheartedly. So you had to do things that aren't 100% gonna feel 100% natural. Like that initial sort of few, you know, minutes of the movie where he dies and then we get the funeral. It didn't feel like it was a natural part of the movie, but ultimately it is now a natural part of the movie. You know, like, it wasn't organic to what they were trying to do initially, clearly, but it's fine. It's part of it now. It's part of the legacy of this whole thing. Like, people will talk about this. People will acknowledge this. Like, this will be something that will be always talked about and always acknowledged as, like, just, it's the reality of the situation. And it's extremely difficult. And now it's over. So that part is over. We move on, and then we jump a year later, right? So a year later, we've got this sort of situation where the world wants vibranium. They don't trust Wakanda. They're trying to get the vibranium, and the Queen Ramadala, I think her name is. Forgive me if I didn't say that correctly. But Angela Bassett, she's basically like, don't fuck with us. she's like at the United Nations. She's like, just don't fuck with us. You want our shit? Well, you can't have it, because it's not the technology that's dangerous. It's you that's dangerous. And I was like, mic drop. Move along. At the same time, though, we find out that there is other stuff going on, right? There is a search for vibranium happening, and there is technology to search out vibranium, and it's the Americans behind it, and they have found vibranium. And so that is the catalyst for now the introduction of Namor, and Talokan. Not Atlantis, Talokan, right? Atlantis is the Lost Kingdom where Namor was said to come from in the comics. Why did they change it for the big screen? Because DC already did Aquaman. That's why. If you're a comic fan, like I am, and you understand DC and Marvel, you understand that there's a lot of parallels between DC and Marvel. So DC comes up with something, Marvel kind of emulates it to an extent. Marvel comes up with something, DC emulates it to some extent. And a lot of the things that exists come from, our own myths, our own sort of historical myths. Atlantis being one of them. The king of Atlantis. He's Aquaman in the DC universe. He's the Submariner, Namor, in the Marvel universe. But as far as like filmic storytelling goes and filmic competition, you can't do the exact same thing because I'm Joe Nobody. I'm Joe Average Nobody, right? I'm going to the movie theater. I don't know comics. I don't know Marvel. I don't know the history. I'm just going to watch a movie. And everybody's like chattering, superhero fatigue, superhero fatigue, superhero fatigue. I've seen Aquaman. I enjoyed it. It was a fun spectacle, whatever. Then I go watch this, and it's Namor, and he's basically Aquaman. Like, I'm going to be like, superhero fatigue, blah. No, like, they need to do something different. So I'm sure that was the mandate. We need to do something different with Namor. And then Ryan Coogler was like, well, fuck. Like, let's take, like, an older sort of Mexican indigenous culture and imbue it into the history of these like super beings, this super powered sort of culture that exists below the ocean. So this would go back probably around this, like it was before the Spaniards got here, right? Got to Mexico. And so like 400 or 500 years that this sort of civilization found like vibranium laced plants that ultimately gave them the ability to breathe underwater, but lost them the ability to breathe above water, right? So they had to sort of adapt and then embrace their sort of new way of living. And they did, and they built a whole culture around it. And then Namor was born, right? Namor was born in the middle of that all kind of happening. And when Namor was born, he was the only child that was in the womb of a mother when she took this plant, right? Is that what caused his mutation? Because he called himself a mutant. He said, I am a mutant. I am different than everybody else in my kingdom, right? Like, I can breathe out of water. My skin is not blue. I have wings on my feet that can actually help, like, allow me to fly. And like the way he flew and the aerodynamics, it really worked for me. It really worked for me. So they redefined the origin, but ultimately Namor is a mutant, as he is in the comics, and he was the first mutant in the comics, or like an early mutant in the comics. Shit, like they keep retconning the past. So we had Apocalypse, who was supposed to be the oldest mutant, and then we found out Namor was a mutant. In the comics, he's older than Apocalypse, I believe. But maybe I'm wrong about that. But nonetheless, like ultimately, we've gone back even further than like creation or something. I don't know. There's been mutants throughout fucking history, and there's mutants throughout the fucking universe. But the point is that Namor's a mutant, and Namor is old, and Namor is smart, and that is what we got. The culture that sort of defines the world in which he's from is unique to the film, and that's beautiful. I thought like the music, the visuals, the sort of aspects of the culture that were presented and the way they were presented was gorgeous. It was just lovely to watch and lovely to see. And I really just like it. It felt very similar to when I originally watched the first Black Panther and was just kind of processing this beautiful world that had its own culture and like and its own just all around flavors that just were so delicious to intake via every sense. So we got that with this new sort of underground civilization that is based on the Aztec, I believe is Aztec. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a historian, so I don't know. It's either Mayan, Aztec. I forget the exact names. But nonetheless, it comes from our own history, or the history of these indigenous people on the one of the American continents, and it evolved to create a new context for something that's familiar, because ultimately what matters is Namor, and we got Namor, and he's dope, Like I loved him. I thought he was great. I thought he was formidable. I thought he was complex. That's Namor. And he feels slighted by the world, like he saw what, the conquistadors did to the indigenous folks, to the people that he came from. And now he's seeing it happen again, and they've tried to stay away from all of that, right? They've tried to just stay hidden. But now they realize that they cannot stay hidden because the same source of power that allows the Black Panther to be the Black Panther and allows Wakanda to be a superpower is the same thing that drives his own civilization. And of course, ultimately, if you're going to expose one civilization that is rooted in this power, it's going to expose others, and that was sort of the conceit of the story, right? That was like the main driving force. So I can see how that would have played out the same no matter what happened. If Chadwick Boseman had lived and he was Black Panther, I'm sure all these story elements would have been the same. I mean, they're very well thought out. It's very clear where they were going, and it could have worked with T'Challa. So I was happy with the way that the representation of Namor and his culture, like, kind of brought in this new life into this world, and really kind of kept everything going. And like, there was so much spectacle associated with it. Like when you start seeing the Talakanians popping out of the ocean and like fighting and doing all this cool shit, like it was kind of like really just eye candy, just goodness, right? So really enjoyed that. So again, like we get that initial scene where the Talakanians and Namor is introduced, right? They take down that helicopter, and then Namor eventually, and that whole facility where they are using that device to seek out the vibranium. So they take that whole institution down in the middle of the ocean, and then he approaches Shuri and Queen Ramadala, and ultimately like tells them, hey, like, you got to find out where this technology came from. This is your fault. I need you to bring me the scientist who's responsible for creating this machine. And that takes us to Ironheart. That takes us to Riri Williams. Now, Riri Williams introduced in the comics in the 2010s, and that in the comics, Tony had died, like he has in the films. She sort of develops her own tech, and she becomes like an Iron Warrior, right? She's got her own suit, whatever. So I like that the thing driving this narrative is the thing that brings her into the story, because, you know, if you think about it, like Phase 4 has really been about introducing these young new characters. Like that's basically what Phase 4, because this movie ends Phase 4. So what I'm assuming that means is that we're done introducing these new characters, like these new younger characters. If we go back to the beginning, WandaVision, you got the two kids, right? Wanda's two kids. Then we move forward. In Loki, you had a young Loki that's introduced. Apparently, he becomes Iron Lad. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we had another kid introduced. The grandson of Jeremiah, the dude that was a super soldier that was screwed by the government. You've got Kate Bishop introduced in Hawkeye. Thor has a kid now from Thor: Love and Thunder. I think Moon Knight's the only one that didn't introduce a kid, but it introduced Moon Knight. So it kind of introduced like a more horror element to things, which is also something they've been building up in this phase. And a few other kids were introduced. We've got Stature now that's going to play a role in Ant-Man Quantumania, which looks really cool. So that's the daughter of Ant-Man and Janet Van Wise. That's not the right. Van Dyne. Janet Wise is from Rocky Horror Picture Show. Janet Van Dyne, right? So they've got a kid. So clearly we're doing Young Avengers, and it's going to happen, and that's where a lot of this is kind of going. But that's going to be one thing. I'm going to say that, like, something's going to happen where like all the adults are going to die and all the kids are going to have to fight Kang or something. You know, something like that. Who knows? That's just sort of what I'm postulating is going to happen. But nonetheless, I see that Phase 4 has basically been about that. It's like bridge us from the Infinity Saga to what's coming next, right? Act 2 of what do they call it? The Multiverse Saga. Oh yeah, we had America Chavez introduced in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. She's going to play a role without a doubt. So we've introduced a bunch of characters. That's what Phase 4 is about. We've bridged these two sagas, and now we have this really potent story where now we not only introduce Namor, but we also introduce Shuri as a Black Panther, right? And in the background, we also have the Queen kind of having her story, and like Okoye having her story to become Midnight something, the Midnight Warrior or something. I forget what the name was. She commented on the ugly design of her suit, and like it is ugly. At least the mask is. I like the rest. I like when she takes off the mask. I think it looks cool without the mask. Because Denai Guerrera, I mean, she's a beauty, so like, you know, more of her face. But each of these characters had this like storyline and story arc in the film, and I really enjoyed that. We had a new introduction of a few other warriors. We had some of the Dora Milaje highlighted. Like, I think that's the blessing of this curse of having lost Chadwick, is that the movie gets to kind of give us these other characters, which, I mean, I think everybody thought were awesome in the original film, and we all wanted more of it. And the idea that you could make a Wakanda film was always kind of present, at least for me, and I'm sure a lot of people as well. So, you know, it's an unfortunate circumstance that everybody faced, but nonetheless, it was an opportunity to delve deeper into the greater world of Wakanda. M'Baku, you got a little bit more of M'Baku. Always enjoy some M'Baku warrior action. We got a lot of that in this movie. Really enjoyed that. So anyway, so we got Riri, right? We got Riri introduced. We get a knight. Oh, there's one other thing that's interesting, and that's that what's her name? Something DeFontaine, Elaine from Seinfeld, from Veep, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She shows up in this movie. We've seen her. We saw her at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We saw her again in, was it in the Black Widow movie? I don't know. We've seen her again, and now we see, oh, she's married to Bilbo Baggins. I forgot his name. The dude that was like the colonizer, right? He's in this movie, and it turns out they were married once, and they have a relationship. So we get a little bit more of her. She's like the head of the CIA, apparently. She apparently is the one that's going to put together the Thunderbolts, I'm assuming. Anyway, we get a little bit more of her, which is great. It just kind of subtly building out the universe, kind of these other threads that need to be built to ultimately be foundations for what's coming next, I'm assuming. So I enjoyed that, just a little bit of extra kind of stuff going on. All the while, we are being introduced to Riri. We understand that her technology was being used against her knowledge. She didn't know that her project at MIT was being used to hunt down vibranium, and that it's become the catalyst for like this potential war. So she gets roped into the situation. We get a great set piece with her, Okoye, and Shuri being chased by the CIA agents. And I really enjoyed that whole thing. And then it culminated with the Talokanians emerging from the water, being badasses, and then you had a badass fucking fight between Okoye and the head dude, kind of the general of Talokan, that big ass dude. That battle was fucking fire. My God, that was fucking amazing. Just amazing. Love that whole thing. I love the water bombs. It's such a great, so it's not that he controls the water like Aquaman, right? You got to distinguish between that. But they have like these water bombs that aren't, the science of which was not explained, but fuck it. I don't need the science explained. But somebody should explain it at some point, because it's really interesting to think about, well, where's all that water come from? But clearly like you're compressing molecules in some way. I don't know. I'm not a scientist of that caliber. Anyway, so so then that takes us to sort of the middle of the film. Okoye is like stripped of her fucking of her status. That was a rough one to watch, right? So then she gets the boot. Shuri and Riri get taken to Talokan, and then we have these moments with Namor and Shuri that kind of appear like they're gonna build like a romance. But that's the beauty of Namor. You know, he's like a romanticizer, but he's also this like very calculated, strategist, right? That's why he was on the Illuminati in the comics, because the guy, like, he's always thinking several steps ahead. So he's trying to manipulate the situation so that ultimately Shuri and him can form an alliance. Like, because he doesn't just want to stop the humans from coming after them and finding the vibranium and etc., but he wants to now wage a war on humanity. That's always been part of Namor's thing. In fact, Namor was the first. If you look at the first Marvel comics ever printed, Namor was the first character introduced. He's the first Marvel Comics character. Like, he's like very important in the Marvel canon, and so like, you know, he has to play a huge role. And at some point, I believe he did. He flooded New York City in the comics very early on. Might have even been in the first Marvel Comics appearance he made, 1939, Marvel Comics #1. So this has always been his thing, and like I like that it was tied into like sort of colonizers driving this sort of need to defend yourself, and how ultimately that is what drives him to now want to have this war against humans. So we'll see how that plays out beyond this movie. Clearly, at the end, he was like, I succumbed to Shuri, but really it was a calculated move. Like, they're going to come for them, and then they're going to need us, and we're going to be their allies, and then we're going to unite. Because clearly he wants to unite with Wakanda to wage that bigger war still on humanity. And it's Namor. It makes perfect fucking sense. So we had those moments, and then in the background we have the reintroduction of T'Challa's romantic interest, Lupita Nyong'o. I can't remember her name right now. Damn. But she is introduced again. She has been in Haiti. We find out that she's been there for a while. She didn't go to the funeral. I mean, clearly she's just wanting to live a separate life. I mean, we later find out why. Shh. But yeah, like she's living this other life, but then she is, the queen recruits her to find her daughter, right? And she ultimately does. She finds her daughter, she takes her back, and then that brings the Talakans to Wakanda, and that's when, you know, they attack Wakanda. And they don't flood Wakanda in the way that we thought they were going to flood Wakanda, because in the comics, Namor flooded Wakanda. But that's not what they did here. They just brought a lot of those bombs, and they sort of attacked, and ultimately we lose Angela Bassett. That was a powerful moment. I was like, Niagara Falls, like, I'm all right. We've already lost Chadwick, and now we're gonna lose, you know, the character of Queen Ramadala, which, if it had to happen, it had to happen. I mean, the superheroes in the Marvel universe have to be orphans, I guess. That's just the rule. Shuri took it. It was hard on her to take that. It was a very powerful moment. That moment of Namor killing her. It was a very powerful moment. I like the way they pulled it off. That whole sequence was amazing. Every character had like great moments, kind of trying to save the city, and they did a great job of sort of representing the scale of the invasion and the battle that was being waged in a potential war. And ultimately, we got to see Namor in action, which, I mean, that's what Namor is. You know, Namor is a powerhouse. He is a force of nature. You cannot fuck with him. And I like that in the movie, like, they explained his power. You know, he's a mutant, yes. meaning that he's different from the rest of his people. But his mutation is driven by something, right? Like, why is he so powerful? Oh, because he's getting more oxygen into his body than the average entity, right? Like, he's getting oxygen both from the air and from the ocean. So they decided, well, we're going to take away his moisture to weaken him. Like, that was the plan, and great. That worked out. But anyway, so post that moment, that's where Shuri ultimately... we had that moment with Namor and Shuri where he gives her his bracelet, and he says that some of those fibers were like from the plant that ultimately made them into the people they were. So there is some relationship with the heart-shaped herb there, and I immediately thought, okay, so she's going to use that to recreate the heart-shaped herb, right? Like, there's something missing in the formula, and this is the secret ingredient. So ultimately, she is able to recreate the heart-shaped herb. She takes the heart-shaped herb. She wants to see her ancestors. She wants to see her brother. She wants to see her mom. And who does she see? She sees fucking Killmonger. So fortunately, Killmonger did not survive the last film, as people speculate he would. But Michael B. Jordan did make an appearance here to sort of kind of establish a potential trajectory for Shuri as a character, as a Black Panther. You know, is she going to be cutthroat like her brother? I mean, like her cousin? Or is she going to be like of sound mind, forgiving, and have less revenge in her heart, much like her brother? And ultimately we see that play out. And I thought that was a really great moment. And I think that it was just such a beautiful moment towards the end where, you know, she could have killed Namor. And then we have this beautiful kind of montage of these various scenes from Talokan and from Wakanda that all mirrored each other. They all paralleled each other, right? You had little kids playing. You had, people working. You had people enjoying themselves. A mother. You know, it's just like Niagara Falls, baby. Niagara Falls. It's just like, oh my God, this is beautiful. I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. It's such a lovely Ryan Coogler moment. That's a deft filmmaker moment, you know? A filmmaker who's like, well, let me use the power of cinema, editing, to really kind of drive home a point and make it visceral, you know? And I thought that's what it did, and it was beautiful, and I loved every freaking second of it. Thank you very much. Anyway, so Shuri takes the heart-shaped herb, right? That she now is the Black Panther. She's become the Black Panther. Everything gets taken into the mountains so that the people of Wakanda can be safe up there on higher ground in case. Well, I mean, Namor said he's coming back in a week, right? After he took the mom's life, so they know he's coming. So then they're like, okay, we gotta get him before he gets us. So they have the whole tribe together. Shuri shows up. All the tribes are together. Shuri shows up as Black Panther. It unites everybody. Everybody's like, fuck yeah, we got a leader. It's a very beautiful moment. I loved it. I thought it was a very special moment. The audience clapped when it happened, which was lovely. And so we had that moment happen. And then, ultimately they draw the Dalekans to an area where the machinery is once again being used to draw them in. And they've got this dope ass like Wakandan like submarine / ship thing that all the warriors are on, and everybody's ready to go. Riri's got a new suit. You got Okoye, she's wearing this other suit with the new Dora Milaje girl who's fucking awesome herself, and they both wear these new suits, and it's just all out war against the Talakans and Talakanians, and it's just grand Marvel spectacle, just the kind of battle that I want from my kind of big final set piece to a film. You know, everybody's going up against each other. People are just like these immovable objects versus this unrelenting force. I forget the saying, but anyway, just like power going up against power. We got Brains trying to outsmart the Talakanians, and then the Talakanians coming up with their fucking strength in numbers and their force and just almost overpowering. At the same time, we get the sort of plan against Namor. They get him into the ship. They start to dry him out. They weaken him. And then, but Namor's unrelenting, right? And that's what I love. It's like it's like you can come up with plans to try to stop these like powerhouses, but in the end, can you truly stop them? The only way you can truly stop them is to try to reason with them, And so then finally we do get that moment where Shuri gets clarity, right? After she gets that beautiful sort of montage kind of revelation moment where she realizes, I have to be better. I have to forgive. I can't let revenge drive me. If I kill him, then there will be war forever between Talokan and Wakanda. Like, that's not what I want for my people. I'm the leader of my people now. Like, there is a better way, and she finds a better way. She forgives him, and then ultimately that ends the big war, and they all kind of stop, and then the battle's over, and it's lovely. Wonderful. Wonderful. Works for me. Works for me. And you didn't get that shitty kind of CGI moment that we got at the end of Black Panther 1. So at the end of Black Panther 1, when the two Black Panthers are fighting, the CGI got a little bit too CGI, right? It wasn't as good as it could have been. And I always think, like, why not go back and kind of just, like, kind of smooth that out? Because, well, I guess I know why. Because the special effects resources have been spread thin lately. And Marvel's been having trouble getting all their stuff out properly because it's just, there's just not enough workers to go around to do this work. and so like you got to make do with what you got. But so they're not going to go back and fix stuff. Maybe they will eventually, but who knows? But I didn't get that from this movie. I didn't get that from the big final set piece, the third act. I didn't get that. I got everything looked great, and like the way everything was being presented, and Riri like taking off in her suit and doing the Iron Heart thing was dope. Everything worked for me. Everything looked great. It was just such a wonderful experience. Just a wonderful experience. And then finally, it all kind of, just we get to those final moments of all the tension coming down and everybody kind of settling back into their lives, and then we see Leticia, Shuri go visit Lupita Nyong'o. Damn, I still can't remember her name. I had her name and I lost it. In Haiti, and then she's gonna burn, I think, somebody's clothes, like either her clothes from the funeral with her mom or something, and so then she has that moment of reflection, and it's lovely. The film ends, and it's just I don't know. I felt it was all very lovely and touching and just wonderful, and I was crying quite a bit, had tears in my eyes. But then we had that mid-credit sequence, That was something special, man. By the end of that, I was just crying my brains out. Lupita Nyong'o comes out, and she's got T'Challa's kid, this little boy, and it's such a wonderful moment because Leticia's like, Shuri had lost her family, like she's lost everybody, but then all of a sudden here she's got family again, It's touching, man. It's touching. It's getting to me again. It's getting to me again. And Lupita Nyong'o, she's like, this is T'Challa's kid, and T'Challa is his name, but he's taken on the name Tosin, which I believe is a character that was introduced recently in the recent run of Black Panther, but not as his son, but maybe in the comics he's his son too. But he's saying Tosin is just like my Haitian name, and my actual name is T'Challa, Prince T'Challa of Wakanda. I mean, how beautiful is that? It's so lovely because like you get this hope for the future, and you get that moment of like, I know that people watching this movie are going to be fucking crying their eyes out when that happens. Because like this whole recast T'Challa thing, like people were passionate about it. But this, I think, will appease folks that kind of were so driven by that. Anyway, that's the movie. It's a great fucking movie, man. It's great. It's kind of like Black Panther 1, you know, like they're Marvel movies, but I mean, beyond the spectacle, like it just feels more important than just grand spectacle storytelling. You know, it feels more important than that. Black Panther 1 feels important. Was important, felt important, still feels more important. I mean, you can go back and watch my review of Black Panther 1 that I did when I came home from watching it. Like, I talked about the significance of that movie, where for the first time ever, like, I saw black folks being celebrated in every way possible. You had a full black cast, and everybody was just being treated with reverence, and we had never seen that before at the level of spending that Marvel does, the amount of resources, the amount of artistry that goes into developing a Marvel film. Like, we'd never seen something like that, and we did, and it was special, and it became one of the greatest grossing movies of all time, and ultimately is a benchmark for, I think, a turning point in the industry itself. You know, now we're seeing a lot of representation, and it had been happening. Obviously, it was itself a culmination of this momentum to kind of broaden the representation in what we see in our mediated content, and so now, like, we see it a lot. Like, we see it several places. I just did a review on Interview with the Vampire. Interview with the Vampire brings in a very sort of black element to a story that was very white before. I mean, we didn't talk about race before, but it was white. And now, like, there's like an element of diversity in it, and they wove it into the story, and it worked. So anyway, like, I feel like Black Panther was a turning point, and I think this movie is just like kind of the end result of like all the momentum that's come before. Like, now, not only do we have this movie of all these wonderful characters of diversity from various cultures, but a lot of the film is female-based, female-driven. A lot of strong women. I mean, we get a strong male antagonist, and we've got, you know, M'Baku, and we've got the dude from Bilbo Baggins. But beyond that, it's just like strong fucking women doing the job, and then fighting against other strong women, or fighting against really strong men, and being successful. And like, yay, great. Tell me a good story, executed well, and I don't care who's in it, or what they're doing, or what their race is, or what their what their culture is. I just do it right, and it's been done right here. So there you have it, folks. That is Wakanda Forever. I really enjoyed this movie. Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to seeing it again. I'll probably go see it again soon, once the crowds die down a bit. Go and enjoy it, and then maybe enjoy one more time in the theater, and then enjoy it a few times at home. Because why the fuck not? It's going to be on Disney Plus before you know it, and then we'll be able to watch it quite a bit. I need to go back to Thor: Love and Thunder, by the way. A lot of negative stuff about Thor: Love and Thunder. Was it my favorite movie of Marvel? No. Was it a bad movie? It wasn't a bad movie. It was a pure Taika Waititi movie. I talk about it in my review. I appreciate it as a Taika Waititi movie. I understand that as a Marvel film, it went a bit too far with the comedy, but hey, this film kind of brought it back. So we're good. They took a lot of swings recently, but this film kind of, I think, brings things back to the level that we need things to be in the Marvel universe, of balance, where you can have some characters be humorous at appropriate times, but overall it's about the story. It's about the momentum of the story. It's about the seriousness of it. It's about the magnitude of how things affect the characters, and then processing those situations in very real ways. And that ultimately, I think, is the recipe for what makes Marvel a success, and why people keep going back to it. Anyway, love this film. I'm going to go and just cry some more for probably the rest of the night. And then eventually get back to watching Wakanda Forever. What do we got next? We got Quantum Mania coming up. I think that's in a few months, right? We've got Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Oh, we've got Guardians of the Galaxy, the Christmas special coming up. So that's coming up very soon, probably. I think it's after Thanksgiving, so like in 2 or 3 weeks. The night of Thanksgiving, it might be. And then Quantum Mania Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and stuff. There's more stuff coming. And as far as mutants go, like we've got an actual mutant. We've got a couple mutants now running around. I still hypothesize that mutants have created a Krakoan nation state and they have erased everybody's memory of mutants. But mutants have existed. And people just simply forgot about it because a telepath like Emma Frost and a few others probably wiped everybody's memory of mutants. This is my postulation of what is possibly happening. Because if there are mutants out and about, that means mutants have been around. And if mutants have been around, then where's Magneto been? He's been there, but everybody forgot. That's what I'm saying. But I don't think we're going to deal with that right away. We're kind of sprinkling in mutants. Let's see how it all goes. I'm excited. As anyone would be. I mean, this is great storytelling on a level that we've never seen before for things that people like myself and probably somebody like you, if you're watching this video and got this far, love. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel, give it that like, and tell your friends about it, and have people come up by and press that bell too, so that you know when I get videos on board. At some point, something changed in the algorithm, and my views just plummeted, and they never recovered because even though I've got a decent amount of subscribers, like I don't think my subscribers see my videos when they're posted, because something's going on with the way YouTube sets things up. Anyway, bullshit aside, who cares about that? I don't care about I don't care about becoming a YouTube success. I just like doing this because it's fun. And that's why I've always done it, and that's why I will continue to do it. Anyway, I hope all of you are doing well out there, and I hope you guys enjoy Wakanda Forever as much as I enjoyed Wakanda Forever. And as always, I want to remind you that if you haven't already, you better put an X in the box because ain't nobody checking me. Take care, folks.